Hello and welcome to Conversations with Reverend G. I am Reverend Grenetta Mason, aka Reverend G, and I'm here every Monday night, WEMS Radio Live, bringing you conversations with guests from all walks of life and with different perspectives. We talk about life, we talk about love, and we talk about spirituality. We talk about spirituality from a practical point of view. How does it support you in your everyday life? How does it support you moment by moment? And I also talk about the spiritual toolkit and what practices are in your spiritual toolkit. I know our spiritual practices are personal to us. So my guests, they share what their spiritual practices are and they talk about their spiritual journey. We're here hoping to touch, move, and inspire you. And my motto is to bring you joy, help you find joy with grace and ease, living your best life. There's so much going on now, and I think that having some kind of tools, spiritual tools, I call them spiritual practices, can support us a lot because we COVID, we're moving out of COVID, then we're moving into the third world war and all this tension around how we're living our lives. We're looking at taking off our mask now and what that feels like for everybody. So much is going on. I hope that we can talk about different practices that can support us through this. As a proponent of mental health, I also talk about seeking help, getting the help that you need. And another thing that can really support you too is talking about the different things that are going on with you. Find somebody to talk to, find a community that you can relate to. You can find me every day on Facebook as Reverend Grenetta Mason, and I'm also on Instagram as Rev Grenetta. Tonight, I have a really special guest, and we're going to have some great conversation. I have Sage Hewitt here tonight. Sage is an artist that I met singing a choir, and you know how I love to sing in the gospel choir. Hey, Sage, come in and let's have this conversation.
Hi, good
Hi.
evening, Grenetta.
Yeah,
Good evening.
I thought about like where I met you, and I'm thinking about singing tenor in the Unity Choir.
Wow, singing tenor in the Unity Choir
Yeah,
before COVID,
so,
right? Right before all
yeah,
of this, everything has changed.
it's
Everything.
changed. So, introduce yourself to everybody.
Yes. So, as Grenetta said, so my name is Sage Hewitt. I am a Black transgender woman from the Bronx, New York. I graduated from Berklee College of Music with a degree in professional music. And I am a special education preschool teacher, as well as an artist and inspirational speaker and healer. And I'm so honored that Grenetta has asked me to be on this lovely segment. Wow, Grenetta, this is fabulous. I love all of it. I love all of it. And it's inspiring because recently in October, I actually just started a visual podcast. So shout out to Black content creators and the girls that are doing their thing. This is inspirational. Thank you, Grenetta, for having me. This is
Yeah.
cool.
So yeah, let's just jump in and talk about. So since I met you in the choir, let's talk about the music first. Take us on a little journey with your music career, because I know you went to Berkeley. Did you start singing young, and then you decide to go to music school? So take us on a little journey with
Hey,
that.
hey, cousin. So, yes. So, I started singing probably around between the ages of 8 and 11, roughly. And so, speaking of choirs, the choir was my earliest form of vocal performance and training. I joined the middle school choir under the direction of Miss Felicia Yarber.
Mm.
And I have my first solo, I think, in like the 6th or 7th grade or something like that. And it was, I think, a song called "And I'll Never Walk Alone," or or,
Mhm.
or something like that.
No, that song sounds familiar.
Yeah. I can't remember. I couldn't tell you who the original artist was, but I connected with the lyrics and just the harmonies that we were singing at that time. It felt really, really special to me. And ever since then, I've been singing in choirs. After middle school, I then went on to a music high school called Bronx High
Mhm.
School, the Celia Cruz Bronx High School of Music,
Mhm.
uptown in the Bronx, which is now inside of Walton High School campus.
Mhm.
So yeah, I've always been doing some form of entertainment, whether it was singing or even before then dancing. I was in a junior K company at the local Boys and Girls Club
Mhm.
from elementary school leading up to my first choir experience.
Mhm.
And then yeah, after high school and going to a whole performing arts uh, situation there, I then
Mhm.
went on to go to Berklee College of Music, where I
Mhm.
studied vocal performance, music business, and songwriting.
I know. I think when I first met you, you've done some videos and you have music out there, right? That you've
I
done.
I do. Yeah, I have some featured music, and then I also released a few solo singles on like SoundCloud and Spotify. Check out Moonlight on
Mhm.
Spotify, my video
Mhm.
as well.
Mhm.
That was my first solo music video performance that I
Mhm.
did back in, I think it was 2000, either 17 or 18 was when
Mhm.
Moonlight was released.
That's been a while because we missed 2 years. It feels like, right? So, and no, have you? So what is it? How is are you transitioning back into music now, or because COVID put a whole thing on what everybody was doing. So that was prior to that when you were doing the videos. Where are you now with the music, and how are you moving back into that?
It's so interesting. So right now, I am definitely still on a little bit of a break from music, I guess you can call it.
Mhm.
Um, Through COVID, I have been songwriting for a friend of mine
Okay.
who's slated to release a project soon. So I've been working on music in different capacities for other people,
Okay.
outside of
Okay.
myself, just out of the love for songwriting and melody, um, and community, you know?
Mhm.
So yeah, it's right now a lot of my creative energy has been going into the visual podcast that I'm on called
Okay.
Unbinding the Binary. Yes, I
Okay.
am one
Mhm.
half of that segment with my co-host Deshawn, who also went to Berkeley with me and is also a singer-songwriter.
Talk about, I think I've seen one of your shows. Talk about the show and what it is. Explain, for me, the words when you say unbinary, binary, there's a lot to all of those words. And talk about what the show is, and what you want to present to people. Why did you do the show, the why of it, and what you guys are looking to do.
Those are all good questions, Granetta. So, Unbinding the Binary is a visual podcast started by myself and my co-host Deshawn. And Deshawn basically came to me in at the end of September and expressed to me that they've been looking for someone to have insightful conversations about gender identity,
Mhm.
the LGBTQ community, and specifically for people of color, because there's a lot of content out there in the LGBTQ community that is geared toward the entertainment and expressive nature of our community, but we haven't really seen a platform that has allowed people of multiple gender identities and sexualities to come on and speak about their stories and their journeys.
Mhm.
So, our intention behind the show is to invite as many people on from the community to speak about their journeys, either through gender or their sexuality, and also to promote their art. Whether they are a musician, a dancer, a fashion designer. Thus far, we've mostly been inviting on singer songwriters like ourselves,
Mhm.
but it's been a labor of love that has been full of purpose, full of purpose, and I'm so happy that Deshaun had the courage to ask me to be a part of it that day, and it's just been evolving since the fall.
Mhm. Yeah, as I was thinking about it, um being able to really educate people, giving people a place to tell their stories is very healing, right? And
Mhm.
having people feel comfortable with that they can tell their stories and ask the questions and talk about the things that support them in their healing. Because I heard in your comment you were a healer too, right? So it brings to mind different forms. I think we all are
Mm.
healers in different forms, in different ways people can heal through telling their stories, right? And and in particular, when you say people of color, it comes to mind. It's like, where do we have the platforms and where are we able to tell our story and to even be able to step boldly into our stories and tell our stories to our
Yeah.
people and be proud of our stories. And then when it comes to the whole LGBT community and being able to just really step up and tell the story in a way that supports you. So, in your say being a transgender woman, I'm sure you have lots of stories, right? Or I mean, I'm a joker, right? I didn't mean it like that, but lots of stories, but different perspectives and different stories, I would say, from many different
Yeah,
ways. Thinking about how long have you, when did you, because when I met you, were you just in the process of transitioning?
that's a
When,
good question. So
yeah.
at that time, what I would describe myself as was I was always expressing my feminine nature, the feminine side to myself. So
Mhm,
everyone, regardless of your sex or gender, right, possesses two energetic polarities in you, and that's the masculine side and the
mhm,
feminine side, right?
mhm, mhm,
So me at that time being an openly queer man, I always presented feminine. So when
mhm,
you met me, I would say I was more in an explorative phase with my
mm,
identity because I was moving out of a place of fear and feeling like this wasn't something that was ever going to be truly possible for me.
mhm,
Um, or safe, or that I was going to be able to be successful or receive love. Um, so you you met me at a very special time in my life, Granetta, and I'm so
mm,
grateful for you and everyone in the choir and in the community because I think in their own way, whether it was said out loud, I think there was an unspoken, amount of support and openness that I
mm,
experienced there in the choir, at least, out up and out front and
mhm,
being able to get up on that stage, every other Sunday and to, to worship,
mhm.
and praise God. And
Yeah, that is it. I always
yeah,
wanted you to do my makeup or my nails or something because it was like, I was always like, wow, the makeup was flawless and the nails were always done, right? That part, right? So even in
mhm,
expressing that, as you said, it was there, always there, you know.
It had always been there, even well before that. So yes, you met me as Jarrett, of course. And now s- I adopted my artist alias as my legal name. I legally changed my name to Sage. It just
Mhm,
kind of stuck, everybody, all of my friends were already calling me that. And aside from it fitting the sound of music that I was creating at that time, it's just fitting to my life,
mhm,
as
mhm,
sage. As I don't know if anybody's out there is listening, but sage is an herb that is used in many different spiritual and indigenous communities, specifically where it is used as a cleansing agent to cleanse a space of negative or unwanted energies, or also to raise the vibration in order to usher in wisdom.
mhm, mhm,
So naming myself Sage, that I just only pray to God that I would be able to receive, whatever messages and light and blessings that, are for me in my life to share with others.
mhm.
So that's how
Um,
Sage came about.
yeah, I like the sage bloom and the blooming from within. Talk about how you came up with that tag, and it just seems so relevant to who you are now that it had to be a lot of inside, coming from inside to create this outside person.
Yeah, so it's so funny because my handle before that was Light Me Up, I'm Sage, so the lighting of the sage.
Mhm,
Um, Back, pre-COVID, when I was promoting my music and things like that. And over time, I guess everybody gets creative with their Instagram handles. And so I said, okay, this is not really fitting anymore. I think people now know me as Sage. They knew me as Sage the artist, but they had not known, a lot of people who follow me online had not known that this is my name. This is my legal name. It's not just my artist name. And so I guess Sage in Bloom the in Bloom spoke to me because now I feel that I'm at this new place, a new arrival, in my life, where I finally feel aligned and centered in my body and with the woman that I see in the mirror that was always there underneath the surface, but now I have emerged in a sense.
mhm,
I've always loved the concept of the lotus flower and
mhm,
how it grows at the bottom, in murky waters, right up from the mud,
mhm,
and travels to the surface where the sun is shining and exists, and it blooms into this beautiful, beautiful flower. But it could not have done that if it not had its roots down, in this
mhm,
gritty, murky, sometimes maybe troubled water, right?
mhm,
So
mhm. Like out of the troubles, there's some.
there's hope, there's
Yeah.
light, there is
Mhm,
blessings, there is magic, there is
mhm,
abundance, all of those things. And so,
mhm,
yeah, my Instagram handle is definitely, I feel, a call to where I see myself and where I wish and pray to continue to move to.
mhm. What would you say are some of the challenges that you say that you have, I would say lately, some of the challenges that you're facing right now, given, you know, who you are, who you're trying to be, and only and from the perspective to support others who may be facing some of those same challenges and giving them support, hope, and how to move through them.
Challenges that I myself am facing in the current time
Yeah, exactly.
within my transition,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
um hmm I guess sometimes the dating world
Okay.
and has been a very interesting um ship to ride.
Right. It's a ship to ride in the way.
And I guess it could be that way for anyone.
Mhm.
I don't want to make it seem as though everyone from my community experienced the same thing, but I do think that as trans women, oftentimes our orientations are misunderstood, and
Mhm.
our morals, because of what people have perceived us, in the past, women, to have done for work. And so therefore the way that men show up for us romantically can be very challenging due
Mhm.
to, the weight of the world, and the way that the world has viewed trans women and has
Mhm.
viewed men who are attracted to trans women. So sometimes, navigating the dating world is difficult, in a
Mhm.
social and emotional and a romantic sense sometimes, because of um, the friction that the world has placed between men and women, and our sexualities and our expression, and all of these things.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I can understand that being challenging just based on expectations from others, right? In the world and how people view it and all of that.
And
I,
the structures, the structures of society, and
mhm,
what we have been taught that, a family is,
mhm,
there's a whole dynamic to that with a mother and father, and children, and all of these sort of things, which is absolutely beautiful. And we are not here to necessarily dismantle that, but what we are here to do is, I feel, show that there are different ways, and different
mhm.
forms, and types of families.
Yeah. Well, we're seeing more and more of that becoming acceptable. As we think about it, it is really how the world perceives things, how your family, your communities, and being able to find communities where you can be as free as you feel, and feel as though you can express yourself. It's really important also. When I think about it, we could shift. Let's talk about your spiritual journey, because I'm sure it's been some interesting times with just even the way religion is set up, right?
Mhm.
To even get to unity, right? So you started, where it was just accepting and open, to everybody. And that feeling of going to unity was as though all are welcome. Places that say all are welcome, you really felt that everybody could come. So
Mhm.
talk about your spiritual journey and some of the experiences you've gone through.
Yes. I hope I still have you here, because I think the connection was going in and out.
No, no, you're still here.
Um, my spiritual journey. So what I will say is, uh-oh, I'm still here? Okay.
Yeah,
I
you're
just saw a
still
buffering symbol.
here.
In my youth, in my adolescence, my parents came from two very different. Hello?
I'm here. Go ahead. We hear you.
Uh-oh.
Oh wow, I hear you.
We're frozen. Oh, you hear me? Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. You were frozen, so I wasn't sure. So I'm like, does that mean everybody is frozen? Okay, now I see you
No,
nodding
we
your
can
head,
hear
so that
you.
means that we're on. Okay.
Okay.
So my mom's side of the family was Jehovah Witness. So my mom was raised Jehovah Witness.
Mhm.
Um, my dad, I don't really remember what branch of Christianity his side of the family was, but he never really expressed that there was like a strong implementation of religion in their household. So with that said, I think in raising me, my parents allowed me the autonomy to find God in my own ways, you know?
Mm.
Um,
Mhm.
although I had my grandmother who was a practicing Jehovah's Witness, in the early part of my life, and she was basically my first teacher. I learned how to read from reading a children's Bible
Mhm.
from youth. Before I could even, I think before I was even in grade school, I was already reading and recognizing words from the children's Bible, from what I can remember.
Mhm.
Um, and so my earliest memories of actually going to a church consistently was to sing
Mhm.
in the choir. My middle school choir teacher, she had asked my mom if it was okay for me to come, on certain Sundays to sing because they needed some extra voices and she wanted a fuller sound in the choir. So aside from some of the Keenum Hall segments that I experienced with my mom and my grandmother, that was probably one of the most consistent times I was ever in a Christian church.
Mhm.
But again, it wasn't that same feeling because it was more recreational and educational because I was there with a teacher and I was there to perform essentially.
Mhm.
Um, it wasn't really until after college when I
Mm.
moved back to New York City,
Mhm.
where I really began to delve even deeper into my own spirituality, and I had joined the Kabbalah Center here in New York City. And so, for
Mm.
those or anybody who is listening who doesn't know, Kabbalah is essentially a Judaic spiritual philosophy that pulls from the Old Testament, which is the Torah, and the Zohar, which is an esoteric interpretation of the Old Testament, as well as there's, I believe, 24, 25 other volumes that predate the Torah.
Mhm.
Um, and through Kabbalah was where I really started to understand some of the secrets, if you will, of the universe that I always was very curious about as a child. Um,
Mhm.
and it sort of filled in the gaps about certain things in the religion that I always like I just struggled to understand as to why um certain religions kept certain things quiet or shunned certain
Mhm.
people or things
Mhm.
like that. Um it changed my life,
Okay. Mhm.
honestly.
Mhm.
Um and so I was there from about 2014 pretty much up into the present, even through attending Unity. I still celebrate high holy days and read the Old Testament and the Zohar, and I pray in Hebrew and things like that. And
Mhm.
um
So you still do some of the practices?
yeah, some of the practices, some of the more so what I will say is the meditations
Mhm.
upon the 72. So in Kabbalah, a big part of their um, written system is from the 72 names of God. And they're not actually names, there's only one God, but there are 72 channels of light that we access in these meditations for various things or blessings, if you will,
Mhm.
that we
Mhm.
want to draw upon in our life. And I just love how, although it is written in the Torah that this is reserved for the children of Israel. However, the children of Israel in today's interpretation just means the people of God like consciousness,
Mm,
that are
mm,
seeking and following the light. So
mhm.
not necessarily
Take
delegating
second, yeah, certain
responsibility,
people, right.
certain people.
Mhm, mhm.
Mhm.
Well, yeah, that's pretty interesting, and the way you described it is, you know, I knew about it, but to really, and now I understand a little bit more about that, and I think that's called the more modern part of Judaism, right? The Kabbalah.
Right,
Um,
or the more yeah, or the more mystical. You can
Mystical, yeah, that's the word. The more mystical part. That's what I was looking
Mhm.
for. Right, exactly. Yeah, that is pretty interesting. We also talk about spiritual practices, right? Because I talk about the spiritual toolkit, and what that means is what practices are personal for you. For me, right now, I have a lot of different ones, but meditation is really a consistent one that I do. And so talk about what would be your top three practices and how they support you.
So I'm glad that you talked about meditation because that has been one for me for a number of years. And we fall short sometimes, sometimes we fall in and out of it. As of
Mhm,
lately, I've been trying to align my meditations with the cycles of the moon because it helps me to organize
mhm,
and how should I say time, when I'm doing my meditations and when I feel the most connected to the energy at that given time. So whether if it's I do a new moon meditation, which sets me
mhm,
up for the entire month, and then at the end of the month, I make sure that I do one at the full moon to release, to celebrate the blessings of that time, and then to also release anything that no longer serves me. And so yeah, of course, in between there, sometimes at night before I go into prayer, I will do like a short meditation. I love to do my meditations in the bathtub actually, when I'm surrounded
mm,
by water, because I feel that
mhm,
it just calms me down. It calms
mhm,
me down. So meditation is definitely one.
mhm,
Prayer, I feel is one of the most powerful things that you can do in conjunction with meditation, right? Because I've always believed that prayer is speaking to universe, to God, and
mhm,
meditation is listening, right?
mhm,
Is
mhm,
listening.
mhm,
Um, and then the third one, what would be a third one? There's probably some that I would like to add, but I'm trying to think if there's a third one in particular that I do, um, that I feel helps me. Oh, aura cleanses. So maybe if there's anybody out there who doesn't know what an aura cleanse is, every one of us has a unique energy field that surrounds our body. Um, that is unseen, of course, but everybody knows that when you walk into a room, there's a feeling there, right? There's a feeling that everybody gets from you, and there's a feeling that you have for yourself. So I really consistently try to make sure that that is on point. And what I do by that, I mean, I take my hands,
mhm,
okay,
mhm,
bring it around and down. And it is a form of a visualization or meditation. I visualize a white cleansing light
mhm,
around me in my environment that is clearing my aura, you know, um,
mhm,
so that you feel not only grounded, but upright in your body and in your presence and the way that you show up not only for yourself, but for others, you know. As a teacher, I work with young children, you know, from ages 3 to 5. And I'm a firm believer that whatever that thing is that you know, you have in the morning, we're always taught to, you know, leave that at the door. But I think that it's important for us to remind ourselves of that we're human and that our feelings and our emotions are valid and important. So if I had to add another thing, Renata, even though you asked me for 3,
Mhm.
it would be, I do self check-ins. How am I
Mm,
feeling? That's
mm, mhm,
how are you feeling
mhm,
today? Say what
mhm.
what's present for you.
You know
And
what? When you said that self check in, I was gonna. The oral cleansing is the first time I heard of that, and you gave a whole method. But also, that's a check in too,
right.
because if you before, as you said, before you walk into a room or before you go somewhere, you want to bring a certain energy, so you're checking into, so what am I carrying today, or let me clear, or let me do that. So it leads right into your fourth one about these check-ins, right? and
Right.
and
It's in
the
conjunction.
real,
It
yeah,
is.
yeah, that may, because that's what I was gonna, when I mentioned the oral cleansing, I was gonna say it's really, it's a check-in. It's really a way to look at, so who am I being and what am I bringing, right? Because I talk a lot about the law of attraction, right? I'm a big fan of the law of attraction, a big practice, right?
Mm,
Because it's energy, right? And you bring the energy, you create the energy, and it's you bringing it and creating it, but other people bring it. So, how do you handle it when it comes, right? And so, it's all about energy back and forth, but you have to check in and be in touch with who you are and the energy that you're bringing. Even in talking about the law of attraction, I think I was talking to somebody today about how do you, we were talking about men, and you kind of attract the same kind of men. If you look at, if you've been in relationships, you can kind of see the same kind of pattern, right? In the men that you attract. So then if it's not positive, then how do you shift from attracting that, right? And it has to start with you. You know, we were trying to talk about, so what would that shift look like? If I say I don't want to attract these kind of men anymore, what does it look like for me?
right. Well, first, I think you have to identify those men, right? You have to
Exactly.
identify what that is because sometimes we're not a some people, you know, may not be aware of those patterns or they're in denial about them.
Yeah.
Um, and so this is something that, you know, my friends and I and some family members talk about all the time. So the first thing I would say is, you know, to identify those, not necessarily the men, but those traits,
Traits, right?
those traits.
Hmm.
And then secondly, I think it's important to set boundaries. Another thing that I meant to mention along this, you know, journey that I've been on is that you know, last year it's been 1 year that I've been with my therapist.
Hmm.
I see her sometimes once a week or every other week.
Hmm.
And one thing that we have been consistently working on is not only setting boundaries for me, but sticking to my boundaries. Um, and knowing what you want and what you don't want, what doesn't serve you, you know? And I
Hmm.
think once you come into alignment with those traits, the things that, you know, you want and don't want in a relationship, and then sticking to those boundaries, I think you will start to see a difference in the kind of men that you not only attract, but you allow. Because
Hmm. Hmm.
in one aspect, I am a believer in you can't really always control you cannot control other people, right? You can't control what happens outside of you, but you can control the actions that you take
Mhm,
and
mhm,
what you allow into your life. So
mhm,
in terms of situations with men, you know, it's it's really all about what we as women allow, or in the vice versa, what you allow a partner or romantic interest to do and how they enter
mhm,
your life.
mhm. You said so. You got me on my mental health kick, right? Because I'm always talking about everybody get a therapist. Everybody, right? So you've had your therapist for a year. Can you talk about some of the differences you've seen, the support you've gotten? Because I'm always encouraging people to do it, and it's always great when we can share how it has supported us to move to another space or to think differently or to do things different.
Wow.
This
Uh,
is
So, the first thing that I will say is that my therapist in particular has really aided me in setting and sticking to my boundaries. Because she hears all my fluff. Every week
mm,
she hears everything that's going on and taking notes, and she holds me accountable to the things in which I set. I think that it's good to have an unbiased person in your life who is doing a lot of active listening
mhm,
when it comes to the things that you want and you don't want. Just, in terms of your relationships. So that's one aspect.
mhm,
Um, and then just the way that she holds it's a woman
mhm,
there, a black woman at that.
mhm,
Just the way that she holds space for me and allow and reminds me that it's okay for me to have a range of emotions,
mhm,
It's natural. I it has been it will be a year in April that I lost my mom.
mm,
Um and I don't know, how well I initially dealt with my grieving if maybe I didn't have a therapist. And
mm,
I was very fortunate enough to build a connection with her before this happened to me, to where I felt comfortable enough to share, some of the most intimate parts of my thought process and my feelings. Um, so yeah, the holding of space and support, I would be I'm just forever grateful for
mhm,
that.
mhm. Yeah, that's really good. And supporting people and understanding that it's okay. Go seek the help. It can only support you in feeling better and getting better. A lot of people are depressed. There's a lot of depression. We hear a lot about it now, right? And so, as much as I can, I really advocate going to get help.
Mhm.
You talked about losing your mother last year and the whole grieving process. How has your family been supportive to you? How has that been for you?
With my
Your transition and becoming sage. How has your family support been?
Yeah, you know, my mom in the very beginning of the medical part of my transition, and me coming out to her, she didn't really understand.
Mm,
I think she always understood my orientation, my attraction to men at the time of me. being a boy, but I think this was a little this was a little out of her realm of understanding and expectation, and I'm really glad that, you know, she was able to we were able, you know, to make peace with that, and she was beginning to really see me uh,
Mm,
shortly, you know, before her passing, and the rest of my family has rose to the occasion. You
mhm,
know, everybody is on board. They call me Sage. They refer to me as she, and they allow me to lovingly correct them if they forget or
mhm,
slip up or correct themselves. And, you know, everybody holds space differently.
mhm,
Everyone doesn't go as deep, you know. I also have who I saw who joined here, my cousin.
mhm,
We started transitioning around the same time.
mhm,
So she has been a true blessing, you know, to have in my life, not only as a cousin, but almost, you know, like a second sister.
mhm.
Um, to have someone in my family who's also going through the same journey, um, because, you know, we can relate.
Yeah. Mhm. Yep, it's that whole thing about community and having someone that you can relate to, as you go through.
And my father has always been someone who, when it's time to talk, you know, we can really talk and really listen to one another. And so, you know, for him, I think in his own way, he always knew that this was there. And so now that it's just out up onto the surface,
Mhm.
he's and now you're my daughter.
Oh, okay. That's special.
And so
Yeah.
yeah, it's been they've it is very special. It is very special, and I know that I'm, you know, I'm blessed. I count them. I count them Grenetta.
Mhm,
You
mhm,
know, because a lot of people don't, you know, don't have this kind of support, not only from their families, you know, but from friends as well. And in the workplace, you know, I transitioned there.
mhm.
Um, I've been working in the same place since I transitioned, and they have been nothing but super supportive and helpful. I'm
Where
a
is this?
part of
The East
a
Brazil?
wonderful team of people. Yes,
Wow. Okay. What
yeah,
do
at
you
East.
do there?
I'm a special education preschool teacher, a
Right. Okay. Because
sub-teacher,
I was
yeah.
saying, I remember you were a special ed teacher, and I knew you worked at East Brazil. So, what have you seen? Has COVID really impacted you guys a lot more in a different way because of dealing with students with special needs?
When we were remote, yes, you know, it was tough because I think for anybody, even for adults, okay, sitting from a
Right.
screen all day long is not really fun. It's
No.
not really fun, and um, you know, the
Mhm.
initial stages were hard, but we rose to the occasion with being able to provide services, you know, to
Mhm.
children at
Mhm.
home on Zoom. I mean, we were fully remote during the quarantine.
Mhm.
Classes, they had their therapy sessions. I had 3 different Zooms running at one time at one point.
Mhm.
Um, so at that time, you know, the class that I had, you know, it was rough, um, because you know, they graduated. And
Mhm.
for these young babies to go from the classroom with us to then jumping onto the computer screens and being at home and then jumping into a new school, you know, there wasn't a lot of buffering.
Mm.
But
Mhm.
what I will say is, as far as the system and the process of placement goes for these children, because in my school we have 2 classroom settings. We have
Mhm.
a 12 to 1 to 2.
Mhm.
So that's 12 students to 1 special education teacher and 2 assistants.
Mhm.
And then we also have an 8 to 1 to 2. So that is 8 students to 1 special education teacher and 2 assistants.
Mhm.
Um, and the children, in order to get, an IEP going and be accepted into a special education program, they have to be evaluated. And so a lot of these evaluations were done via Zoom. So they're
Oh.
testing these students, for their cognitive abilities and social emotional
Mhm.
abilities and gross motor, physical skills, fine motor skills over this device that you and I are on now. And, they're at a big disadvantage of
Mhm.
placement, so
Mhm.
we're seeing now with those 2 years of students who may have been evaluated over Zoom,
Mhm.
um, that they're ending up sometimes in the wrong setting,
Mm.
um, entering the school with not enough services sometimes.
Mhm.
So things like that, As far as wearing the mask and disinfecting and things, in early childhood, we're always cleaning and washing hands,
Mhm.
sanitizing things down. So that hasn't really changed. That was always there, the level of disinfecting and cleaning and things like that. And the mask wearing, I feel, is like anywhere else. Some people
Mhm.
are comfortable, some people are not. Obviously, the teachers, are fully vaccinated. Um,
But
and
and your kids are in the group where they have to wear masks now, right? There was a
right,
certain group. Yeah. Okay.
right. Yeah, they have to wear masks, but some students have certain needs and certain capabilities and sensory challenges. So I know for a lot of the students in the 8 classes, it's a little hard for them,
Mhm.
to wear the
Mhm.
masks, and so there are some exceptions. But for the most part, in the class that I'm in, my kids they wear the mask, and we take breaks during meal times, and now outdoor play, where they're allowed to be on the grounds without masks and things like that outside. So I am amazed at how adaptable children are to all of
Mhm.
these changes, more so than the adults.
So,
You know.
yeah, that is true. Someone has said that children are pretty adaptable. So we're getting almost to the end. So I'd like to give you a moment, to talk about if there's anything you're passionate about. What do you want to leave people with? After our conversation today.
What I will say is, going back into my spiritual journey, a little bit of my spiritual journey, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
what I would say to people is go where the light is. You know,
Mhm.
I think I like to call myself a seeker. I've been, because I was blessed to have the autonomy to um, figure out my own spiritual path and my own connection to God. I've always gone to where the light is, wherever the
Mhm.
love is and wherever the community is, and the lessons that are there for you to learn at that time. And it may
Mhm.
not be for a long time,
Mhm.
it may be
Mhm.
for a short time until it's time for you to move on to your next level. So seek out the light and go to where the light is.
Yeah, that's
Where
beautiful.
the light is.
Well,
Yeah.
thank
And
you.
you can follow me on Instagram at Sage, SAYJE in Bloom. And also, please follow at Unbinding the Binary. We would love for you guys to tune in with us. And our Instagram handle for that is unbinding the binary podcast.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Yes,
And
Renata, this was fun.
yeah, really, really good.
This was
Thanks for
fun.
sharing. And Yeah, well, I'll be in touch. I'll look for more music from you. You say you've been doing mostly songwriting, right?
Yeah,
Maybe.
at this point.
Yeah. All righty
But it'll
then.
be coming soon. It'll be coming soon.
I'm sure. All right. Take care, and I'll totally be in touch.
Take care, Grenada. Have a blessed night.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining me on Conversations with Reverend G. I'm here every Monday night live on WEMS Radio. You can find me on Facebook and on YouTube. Next week, I'll be here bringing you more conversation with guests talking about our spiritual journey and how we can use our practices to get through these times. I will see you next week. And remember, you can find me every day on Facebook as Reverend Grenetta Mason and on YouTube as Rev Grenetta. Have a great week, and I will see you again next week.